Welcome back to Reason and Theology. I want to talk about the self-defeating nature of what's known as Christian Zionism. If you don't know what Zionism is, and specifically Christian Zionism, I'm going to define what exactly it is, but also talk about how it's inherently contradictory and self-defeating. And I'm going to point out some issues to establish that. So all of that is coming up next right here on the Michael Lofton Show on Reason and Theology. So everybody hit that like button and also the subscribe button if you appreciate the content of this channel, where we cover a wide range of topics, everything from politics to theology to catechesis to history, you name it, debates, everything, we do it. Hit the subscribe button if you appreciate this channel. Okay, what exactly is Christian Zionism? Before we talk about the self-defeating nature, we have to define our terms. It's always important to do that at the outset. So effectively, Zionism is the idea that the Jewish people need to have a state or a homeland in what we call today Israel or Palestine, within the geographic borders that are described, especially in the Bible, given to Abraham and his descendants, according to some interpretations of the Old Testament text. Zionism says that they need to have the homeland there. And Christian Zionism is going to be a group of Christians, not all Christians are on board with it, but a group of Christians who are in favor of that endeavor. And the difficulty in the conversation, of course, has been how to establish that homeland and how to maintain that homeland, especially with the borders that are described in the Bible, given that there's people who already live there and have lived there for a long time. And that's unfortunately led to displacing a lot of people, killing people, taking land by force. Christian Zionism, for a lot of reasons, is in favor of this project because there is a conviction that the Bible says that the Jewish people today are entitled to that land, no matter what, no matter if there's somebody living there. And therefore, Christian Zionism sees its mission to support that endeavor. And I want to talk about the self-defeating nature of Christian Zionism. I've already done a biblical critique of this perspective and shown that the Jewish people today are not entitled to that land on biblical grounds. We've already explored that. So I'm not going to rehash that here. I'm just going to talk about the self-defeating nature of Christian Zionism. So let me share my screen. I want to show you a passage from the Bible, specifically from the book of Deuteronomy. And I think a lot of people who are Christian Zionists don't realize this, and maybe they need somebody to just kind of lay this out for them very, very clearly. So that's what I want to do. Deuteronomy 17, 3-7. It says, "And has gone and served other gods and worshipped them, or the sun or the moon or any of the hosts of heaven, which I have forbidden, and it is told you, and you hear of it, then you shall inquire diligently. And if it is true and certain that such an abomination has been done in Israel, then you shall bring out to your gates that man or woman who has done this evil thing, and you shall stone that man or woman to death with stones. On the evidence of 2 witnesses or of 3 witnesses, the one who is to die shall be put to death. A person shall not be put to death on the evidence of 1 witness. The hand of the witnesses shall be first against him to put him to death, and afterward the hand of all the people. So you shall purge the evil from your midst." What is this talking about? Okay, well, it is talking about how in the land of Israel, if somebody commits idolatry, That is, they worship anyone other than the one true God. Then they are to be put to death. The people of Israel are to bring them out after they've been convicted with 2 witnesses. They're to be stoned to death. So all idolaters within the confines of the land of Israel have to be put to death on biblical grounds. And so this is to apply for the people of Israel within those borders. And it's not a temporary provision. It's something that is to be done at any time when the Israelites are in control of the land. Purify the land, purge it of all evil and all idolatry. What does that have to do with Christian Zionism? I don't think that maybe Christian Zionists realize this, but according to Jews, Christianity is idolatry, and Christianity is polytheism because of the concept of the Trinity. From the Jewish perspective, not from the Christian perspective, from the Jewish perspective, Christians worship 3 gods and therefore are polytheists and therefore are idolaters. So from the Jewish perspective, if one were to apply Deuteronomy 17 consistently, they would have to put to death all Christians who worship the Trinity in the land of Israel. Okay? Now, again, from the Christian perspective, there's going to be pushback, right? And it's going to be a certain, no. This is only worship of one God and all that. Right, from the Christian perspective. We're talking about from the Jewish perspective. The Jews are going to say this is idolatry. And it will be Jews who are supposed to enforce this in the land. So from that perspective, all Christians who worship the Trinity, according to this verse, have to be put to death if they do it in the land of Israel. Are you starting to see why this is self-contradictory, self-defeating? A Christian Zionist who supports the state of Israel on biblical grounds is supporting on biblical grounds the undermining and, frankly, the death of their own position and community. Now, they don't see that when they read this because obviously a Christian Zionist doesn't see themselves as an idolater. So when they come to this text that talks about putting to death idolaters in the land, it's not like they read themselves into the text. Well, of course they don't. The question is, but would a Jewish person read them in that text? I don't know. Let's ask some of them. Let's see what they have to say. Let me share my screen and enable audio, and let's see, according to their perspective, should Christians be put to death in Israel? Take a look at this one. Let's watch it together. This is from an Israeli man, Jewish man in Israel. Let's see what he has to say.
That is the right thing. Are you Jewish? Do you want to honor God? That is the godly thing to do. We respect one another.
The godly thing to do is just to kill you.
The God.
You heard that? The godly thing to do is to kill you, the man says.
This is to kill you.
The godly thing is to kill me.
That's right. That's
Yes?
what the Torah says.
The Torah.
That's what the Torah says. Okay, so the book of Deuteronomy that I just read to you, that's part of the Torah. So he says the godly thing to do is to put Christians to death according to the Torah.
Respect one another.
The godly thing to do is just to kill you.
The godly thing is to kill me.
That's right. That's
Yes?
what the Torah says.
The Torah says to kill
The
us.
Torah says that people who worship idols such as yourself, when there is a Sanhedrin,
To kill us.
yes,
Okay.
that's what the Torah
So
says.
we know how the Jewish people feel about Christians, yes? That you
Christians
discriminate
are-
against Christians.
Christians are idol
You
worshippers.
discriminate
the
against
Torah
Christians.
says that Christianity is idol worship.
Let me-
Now, does this represent all Jewish people? No, I'm sure there's some Jewish people who don't believe this, don't believe Christians are idolaters, or don't even believe that command from the book of Deuteronomy. There's a pretty wide range of beliefs among Jews, right? But for those who hold to the book of Deuteronomy and those that hold that Christians are idolaters, you heard it very clearly. Now, is this kind of a one-off thing, just kind of like one random guy says this on video? No, this is actually a relatively popular position, again, amongst those who are committed to carrying out the commands of the book of Deuteronomy and of the Torah, and are of the conviction that Christians are idolaters. Watch it one more time.
That is the right thing. Are you Jewish? Do you want to honor God? That is the godly thing to do. We respect one another.
The godly thing to do is to kill you.
The godly thing is to kill me.
That's right. That's
Yes?
what the Torah says.
The Torah says to kill
The
us.
Torah says that people who worship idols such as yourself, when there is a Sanhedrin,
To kill us.
yes,
Okay.
that's what the Torah
So
says.
we know how
He says when there's a Sanhedrin, which there hasn't been one since arguably the 5th century. And this is a group of Jewish authorities who are to carry out the commands and the laws of the Torah and carry out sentences and judgments against those who violate the Torah and the commandments of Moses, the law of Moses. There hasn't been one roughly since the 5th century. And of course, the Jews haven't really been able to exercise one independently of foreign power for, several thousand years. Even at the time of Jesus, the Sanhedrin at the time there in Jerusalem didn't have the ability to carry out capital punishment. That's why they had to seek the permission of Pontius Pilate to do so for Jesus. And so he says whenever one is established. Well, what does he mean? Well, because right now the state of Israel is a secular state, which is one of the reasons why I point out that on biblical grounds, they're not entitled to the land, because on biblical grounds, to possess the land, you have to keep the law of Moses. The secular state of Israel does not keep the law of Moses, ergo it's not entitled to the land on biblical grounds. The Bible very clearly teaches, God says that you're going to possess the land only if you obey the law of Moses. And if you violate the law of Moses, I'm going to drive you out of the land and you're not entitled to it. The law is very clear on that. The Torah is very, very clear. And the history of Israel is very clear on that. Anytime that they weren't obeying the law, a foreign power, God sent a foreign power to invade them and displace them and kick them out of the land. So this is why, there's quite a few religious Jews today who believe that the current state of Israel is not entitled to the land and is heretical on Jewish grounds because it doesn't keep the law of Moses. So he's saying, whenever there is this keeping of the law of Moses, then you can establish a Jewish Sanhedrin. And at that time, Christians in Israel will be put to death. And how would you argue with him, on biblical grounds, just at least from the Jewish perspective? From the Jewish perspective of biblical grounds, Christians are idolaters. And hey, it's very clear, put them to death after you have 2 witnesses. And so it shows, again, Christian Zionism, it's self-defeating because it's supporting the establishment of a system that will eventually undermine its very existence, undermine Christianity in the land. And so I don't think that a lot of Christian Zionists have really connected the dots. Maybe they need to see this video. Maybe they need to have this hard conversation and hear what is being said from people who say, look, when we have the chance, when we establish a Sanhedrin, you're going to be put to death. And again, this isn't a one-off thing. This isn't just one guy on one video. I can show you a lot of videos like this. It's a relatively common thing that you can find among those who, again, see Christians as idolaters and want to carry out the law of Moses. Take a look at this one. Jews say that they must kill all Christians for their beliefs. Okay, so is it okay to spit on Christians? Question mark. If they are idol worshippers,
צריכים למאוס בהם ולשקט אותם
we need to crush them and silence them,
ולרמוס אותם ובעיקרון גם
and in principle kill them,
להרוג אותם כי הרי גוי חייב
because the non-Jews must follow
שם המצוות בני נוח ואם הוא לא מקיים את זה צריך להרוג
the Noahide laws, the laws of Noah. And if not, you need to kill them.
אותו. אבל
אתה תהרוג מישהו?
But, and then the guy asks, you would kill someone?
אם הייתי יכול הייתי מוצא
If I could, I would be happy to do it,
לעשות את זה, אבל אין לנו בית דין אז אנחנו לא יכולים לעשות את זה.
but we don't have a Beit Din, so I can't do it. The Beit Din is going to be this religious structure that can judge these matters and then implement such judgments.
אוקיי. אבל זה אמונה של
But it's the belief of another person.
מישהו אחר.
זה אמונה
If someone believes in that, you must kill him, he says.
שמישהו מאמין בה צריך להרוג אותו.
מי שמאמין
Someone who believes that my God
שהאלוהים שלי הוא חלק
is part of a man, so this is going to be the Christian concept of the incarnation, right?
מאיש, אז צריך להרוג אותו. מי
Then he must be killed
שמזלזל באלוהים שלי,
because he is degrading my God, so I will kill him.
אז אני אהרוג אותו.
אז זה לא, אבל זה תפקיד
The guy asks, why is it your role to kill him
שלכם. להרוג
or to spit at?
או לרעוק, זה לא
Isn't that God's role?
התפקיד של אלוקים.
לא, השם
No, God tells us what to do.
אומר לנו מה לעשות.
הוא אומר, זה
He said, is it written to kill?
כתוב, להרוג. איפה? איפה כתוב?
Where is it written? The role of Jews in this world is to do good,
תפקידה בעולם זה לעשות טוב, לגרום שהעולם יהיה נקי.
to make sure the world is clean.
כן.
אז כל בן אדם שיאמין באיזה בן זונה
So anyone who believes that son of a,
אחד,
אבל איפה זה כתוב?
we need to kill him. But where is it written?
אבל איפה זה כתוב?
איפה זה כתוב בגמרא?
It's written in the Gemara. You want to bring a Gemara and see.
זה לא בגמרא, ולראות.
אבל הגמרא זה כתוב על ידי אנשים, לא על ידי...
זה אנשים
Not God, but it was written by people that God sent.
שהקדוש ברוך הוא שלח. חכמים שכתוב בתורה של
The sages of Torah, you need to listen to them.
להם.
Okay, so again, I can show you just a whole plethora of videos like this. It's not an uncommon view or uncommon perspective that you can find among some Jewish people in Israel. Again, it doesn't speak for all Jewish people, right? There's pretty wide range of beliefs. Among Jews, you can find some who are incredibly liberal, who don't even believe in the law of Moses. Some who are secular atheists, others who maybe believe in God but don't believe in the Torah, all the way to just really, really ultra orthodox Jewish beliefs. And so there's everything in between as well. So of course, again, this perspective doesn't speak for all Jewish people, but there are a considerable amount of Jews who are of the conviction that Christianity is idolatry, and that if you have Christianity in the land of Israel and there's a Sanhedrin, then Christians need to be judged and found guilty of idolatry and therefore put to death on grounds of the Torah. So again, there is this self-defeating, self-contradictory nature to Christian Zionism that I think a lot of Zionists are not aware of. Now, take a look at this. This is interesting. This is a Catholic priest and abbot who's doing an interview in Israel, and he's told to remove his cross because it's offensive to Jewish people. This is something that's pretty common to experience in Israel. And again, it's one of those kind of self-defeating issues with Christian Zionism. Christian Zionists who support this, do they realize that they really wouldn't have the freedom to walk around with a cross and stuff like that, according to many Israelis and Jewish people? This is certainly my own experience. Somebody asks, have you experienced this when I was living in Israel? I've spoken about my experiences when I grew up in Israel, grew up in a Jewish community and practiced Judaism as a child for a number of reasons. And, I had some interesting experiences, and I can certainly, confirm some of this stuff and much more. But okay, yeah, watch what they say in the interview to this Christian priest and abbot. This is Catholic specifically.
It's really big and it's inappropriate for this place.
She says, your cross is really big and it's inappropriate for this place, okay?
Okay, that's a Jewish place.
That's a Jewish place. You need to respect the place. Can you please put it inside? Which I'm starting to wonder, is this why a lot of Catholic bishops wear their cross hidden inside of their pocket? I think this might be why, because they don't want to offend Jewish people.
You need to respect the place. Can you please put it inside?
Okay, this is very harsh.
He says, okay, this is very harsh. It's very harsh.
In your religion?
No, you're not
respecting my religion.
Can you please stop taking pictures?
She says, can you stop taking pictures?
You're not respecting. You're hindering me from my human right.
He says, you're hindering me from my human right. This is not provocative.
No, this is not provocation. I'm an abbot.
I'm an abbot. This is my dress.
My dress. This is how I'm dressed.
I didn't tell you to do something with your...
She says, I didn't tell you to do something with your dress code. Well, actually, you did. You asked him to remove his cross. That's part of the dress code.
Dress code? I told you to do something with your cross.
She said, I didn't tell you to do something with the dress code. I told you to do something with your cross. Well, it's part of the dress code.
The cross is part of my dress code. I'm a Roman Catholic abbot.
He says, the cross is part of my dress code. I'm a Roman Catholic abbot.
This is how I dress.
This is how I dress. So you want from me that I am not dressed as my faith told me how I should dress.
You want from me that I am not dressed as my faith told me how I should dress.
This is pretty common thing, right? And it's odd because this person is interviewing the abbot, but wants him to take off his cross because it's offensive to Jewish people. So, I kind of wonder, again, Christian Zionists realize this is the stuff that they're supporting. It's self-defeating to do so. Take a look at this lady who is attempting to preach Christianity to some Israelis. They spit on her and abuse her. Take a look at this.
No.
Whoa.
So that guy just smacked her. The little kids were spitting on her. These are pretty common experiences if you attempt to preach Christianity in Israel.
He slapped my face.
Wow.
He slapped my face.
Jewish people, Jewish people, you're really breaking my heart.
רציתי לשאול מה היו החטאים של ישו והאם זה נכון שהוא בברכה של צער רותחת.
כן. הוא עבר עבירות קשות, מתחילה הוא היה סוטה.
כן, זה נכון שהוא כאילו לתמיד.
Now this is a conversation that's been taking place for hundreds of years, the question of Jesus in the Talmud, and does the Talmud indicate that Jesus of Nazareth is in hell boiling in excrement? I actually have a post where I talk a little bit about this in a Patreon post that I just posted last week, where we go over the Paris debate, the Paris dispute between a Jewish rabbi and Catholic convert from Judaism in the year 1240 in Paris. There was a number of these disputes, and they bring up that issue and kind of debate it back and forth. And there's a debate on, is this the same Jesus revered in Christianity? Is it different Jesus? There's been debates going back on this one for hundreds, if not maybe 1,000 years, maybe even a little bit longer than that. And so that's what they're talking about here. Okay, so take a look at this one, or Jewish people in Israel spitting on these Christian nuns here. So Jewish kids spitting on a cross. I think this is the same Abbott that we saw interviewed earlier. So this guy's cussing out Jesus, spitting on the priest and Abbott and hitting him. I think it's the same one that we saw in that other interview. Very common experience, especially for Catholics in the Holy Land and in Jerusalem. So yeah, you just kind of wonder, do Christian Zionists realize what all they're supporting here? Take a look at this. Pastor Chuck Baldwin. This is an evangelical Baptist who came out swinging on this very issue, and surprising to see because Christian Zionism is very prevalent among evangelicals, especially. They're kind of the ones that have been spearheading this, and they are certainly responsible for quite a few of the politicians that we see in the United States supporting Zionism. Without Christian Zionism, you would just never have this, and you likely wouldn't have the establishment of the state of Israel, let alone it having been sustained this long and having done all the things it's done up until this point. And, here's refreshingly an evangelical pastor calling this out for what it is. Take a look at this.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Trump, I'm sick and tired of hearing you say how many people are being killed in Ukraine, and we all know that a lot of people are being killed in Ukraine. And you keep talking about all the people that are being killed in Ukraine. I have not yet heard you once say anything about the people that are being killed in Gaza. People by the thousands are leaving evangelical churches. More than any time in our nation's history, they are sick and tired of their evangelical pastors and churches supporting genocide against the Palestinian people. They're sick of it. Their support for the bloodshed and the Holocaust, the genocide, the ethnic cleansing in Palestine by the Israelis is driving men of conscience away from the evangelical churches. And they're saying to themselves, if that's Christianity, I don't want anything to do with it.
Good for him. Good for him for calling this out. And good question here. Somebody asks, why do Zionists use Romans 11? They attempt to use biblical grounds like the book of Romans, where it talks about how God's calls are irrevocable, and they attempt to use that to argue that those land promises are still there for the Jewish people. I think that's a misreading of a lot, not only in the Old Testament, but also in the book of Romans and the New Testament. We've explored that here before, but I'll just simply say, look, even if you want to hold to that position, well, it still makes no sense, because the state of Israel does not follow the law of Moses. So it still is not entitled to the land, because the condition for having and possessing the land is conditional and conditioned upon following the law of Moses. So yeah. Okay, but thank you. Great question. All right, well, let's see what else we have here. Take a look at this. Now, Tucker has been going off on Netanyahu in some of the issues with Zionism lately. So we're starting to see some people who maybe were in favor of some of this stuff starting to wake up and realize the problems of supporting the state of Israel. And, again, maybe any Christian Zionist who's watching this should be familiar with this. So take a look at this.
We talked about the woke right. He said, I call it the woke Reich.
It's almost unbelievable that he said that on camera. Imagine. This is a foreign leader bragging about how he's censoring Americans. Again, this guy runs a country of 9 million people that's totally dependent on our tax dollars to exist. And here he is on camera saying, anyone who opposes me in the United States, who opposes more aid to Israel or opposes getting sucked into war with Iran, which does not serve American interests, that person is not simply mistaken or wrong. I'm not going to bother to explain why that person is wrong. That person is a Nazi, part of the woke Reich, a Nazi. And the only way to fix it is by preventing Americans in the last country on earth with guaranteed freedom of speech, prevent Americans from hearing the other side. And so we push Congress to force a TikTok sale, which is true, by the way.
TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential.
And we need to talk to Elon.
So we have to talk to Elon.
Free speech is central to the entire idea of America. In fact, it's really the only thing that sets us apart from any other country on earth. And here's this guy, a foreign head of state, who, let me restate, is totally dependent on our tax dollars to exist, is saying Americans don't have that right, and he's going to do some kind of secret pressure campaign on Elon Musk to censor X because it bothers Israel.
And this is another part of the conversation, another dynamic, and that is that, if you attempt to criticize the state of Israel, or even this particular perspective of some Jewish people, that's labeled anti-Semitism, which is false. I mean, that's not anti-Semitism, but it's called anti-Semitism rhetorically as a propaganda war to silence anybody who would be opposed to this particular perspective. And for a long time, I think, the perspective that has been pushing for Zionism has been very successful in shutting down anybody in the conversation who had some concerns here. Up until recently, now they're starting to realize that they're losing the ability to keep that narrative going, and are losing the propaganda war. In fact, we have, interestingly enough, let's see, let me find it, Netanyahu himself acknowledging that the Zionists are losing the propaganda war. Take a look at this.
The first part was about the propaganda.
The propaganda war? Well, look, no, I think that we've not been winning it, to put it mildly. I think there are vast forces that are arrayed against us. Among other things, the algorithms of the social network that are driving a lot of everything else, and people who really know, and they're the foremost people in this field in the world, they're telling me that about 60% of the responses on the social media are bots. They can categorically say they're bots.
Well, I don't know. That or people are just saying through the propaganda and are fed up, right? But take a look at this. Again, it's kind of one of those things that you wonder, do Christian Zionists realize stuff like this goes on? This is just from 2023. Despite Prime Minister's assurances, Christian Zionists bedeviled by anti-missionary bill. There was an attempt to put forward a bill to prevent any Christians from preaching Christianity in Israel. And one was going to be, if they attempted to promote Christianity in Israel, they would be arrested and, if convicted, sentenced up to a year in jail. Now, it wasn't successful yet, but I do suspect eventually that one is going to make its way through the Knesset. And you just kind of have to wonder, okay, for the Christian Zionists who promote this, surely they would also want to promote Christianity in Israel. Well, do they realize that actually you might not have that freedom in the future? Now take a look at this clip here about Mike Huckabee, who's been a very huge supporter of Israel and Christian Zionists. Even he is starting to have some concerns with what is taking place in Israel.
Evangelical Christians love Israel. It's a land with a 4,000-year connection to our faith. But with the current erratic spasms of the Netanyahu government, the love may be unrequited. Is Israel an unwelcoming place for Christians? A new look into correspondence between U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee and the Israeli government raises questions about whether Christians are being mistreated by Israel. Huckabee alleges that's what's happening. The ambassador sent a letter to the Israeli Interior Minister accusing Israel of blocking Christian groups from entering the country. As a private citizen, Governor Huckabee personally led Zionist Christians on such tours. Now, Ambassador Huckabee initially met with the government of Israel to plead for the Christians who wanted to come and enjoy the Holy Land. But those pleas were ignored. Now Huckabee is threatening reciprocal punishment against Israel and their visa seekers wanting to come to America. He cited harassment and negative treatment of Christian groups. The nerve of Israel to demand America's weapons and money, but then refuse our touring Christians is astounding. About 3 billion people on the planet Earth tie their faith to the geography around Israel. And I believe everyone needs a little more of the golden rule. Treat others as you would want to be treated. Some will criticize this segment and say that the problem of Christians being harassed in or by Israel is overblown. But it's not me saying it. It's Ambassador Huckabee. Is Ambassador Huckabee an anti-Semite now because he's criticizing the government of Israel? Of course he isn't. I wonder if any voices inside the Israeli government have spoken about Christians being harassed or harmed. Here's Isaac Herzog, the president of Israel in 2023.
In recent months, we've seen very serious phenomena towards the Christian denominations in the Holy Land. Our brothers and sisters, Christian citizens, feel attacked in their places of prayer, in their cemeteries and on the streets.
Christians in Jerusalem's Old City say they are often harassed, spit on, and even physically attacked by religious Jewish youth.
I view this phenomenon as extreme and unacceptable in any shape or form. This phenomenon needs to be uprooted.
Earlier incidents include the desecration of a Protestant cemetery on Mount Zion, an attack on international Christians during a day of prayer for Jerusalem, and harassment at a Messianic concert in Jerusalem.
Honest question, how would this be uprooted? Just, again, in light of the Jewish perspective that Christianity is idolatry, and in light of what Moses says there in Deuteronomy to kill the idolater. How honest question, like how would this be uprooted internally among the Israelis? Like that. Wait, I thought that they were entitled to the land on biblical grounds. If the state of Israel says they're entitled to the land on biblical grounds, then aren't they also then required to put to death Christians and anyone who, in their estimation, is an idolater? Well, I just don't understand.
We must respect the members of all religions. We've committed to this since the dawn of our existence.
How? On biblical grounds, how does one do that in light of what we just saw from Moses? Now, if one says, well, we don't have to follow the law of Moses, okay, then you're also not entitled to that land on biblical grounds. But I thought the nation of Israel was established on biblical grounds. It's also a self-defeating position here.
This is the most basic commandment of love your neighbor as yourself.
Since that speech, I'm not sure if things have gotten much better for Christians. According to the Times of Israel, quote, Huckabee said he would warn American Christians that their donations are not received warmly and that tourists should reconsider any plans to visit Israel if the issue is not resolved. Listen to Ambassador Huckabee closely. He's threatening this messaging: boycott your next trip to Israel, divest from groups sending donations to Israel, and sanction Israel by denying visas to their citizens who want to come to the United States. In just a few years, we've gone from Ambassador Huckabee leading Zionist Christian tour groups in Israel to threatening to lead the BDS movement, the boycott, divest, and sanction movement. Congress has passed about a gazillion BDS resolutions, all at the urging of AIPAC. Will AIPAC now target Ambassador Huckabee? Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene blew the whistle on AIPAC on this program with Vish Burra.
I think organizations like AIPAC and Christians United for Israel should register under the law as foreign agents because they are lobbying on behalf of Israel.
Also unresolved tonight is an investigation into the killing of Saif Moussalet. He was an American born in Florida. He was surrounded for 3 hours and beaten to death. There's no suggestion that he provoked the attack or that this was in any way in self-defense. The Times of Israel also took note of our coverage on this program. What the Times pays close attention to is the shift in how right-aligned media covers Israel. It would have been unheard of to have Israel as such a driving force for division just 10 years ago. Now, it doesn't seem Israel likes the criticism. So some who aren't intelligent enough to speak about these issues with nuance simply say that any criticism of the government of Israel is anti-Semitic. That's stupid people talk. It isn't anti-Semitic to criticize the government of Israel any more than it isn't anti-American to say that Biden's presidency was a silver alert.
No, I agree with that. I mean, look, I think anti-Semitism is wrong and evil. Criticizing, however, the state of Israel is not anti-Semitism, despite what some in the propaganda war have tried to say. And even criticizing certain views among some Jews is also not anti-Semitic. You can criticize some views among some Christians without being anti-Christian, right? You can do that for any group, any ethnic group, any religious group. That doesn't automatically turn into being anti an entire ethnicity or an entire religion.
It seems Israel's goodwill with the world has eroded very meaningfully. Christians blocked from the United States, Americans murdered in Judea and Samaria. We don't think it's a tenable position for Israel to say to our fellow countrymen, send us your money, send us your weapons, but don't send us your Christian tour groups or Arab Americans who want to visit family without being beaten to death.
That's an interesting point. Again, that I think Christian Zionists need to consider. Now, take a look at this. We've seen this a lot. Here you have some Jewish people praying at the Temple Mount, which they're not supposed to do, but we've been seeing under Ben-Gvir and others a push for this. Well, why is this potentially problematic? Because, of course, from the Jewish perspective, there's supposed to be the sacrificial system implemented in a temple right here on the Temple Mount. And they want to push for the reestablishment of the temple, rebuilding of the temple, and the sacrificial system. Now, the rebuilding of the temple alone is going to be something that would trigger World War III, since, of course, you have the Al-Aqsa Mosque and also the Dome of the Rock right there, right? How's that going to work? But number two, just from the Christian Zionist perspective, the temple sacrificial system has been fulfilled in Jesus. And so to go back to that would be to spit in the face of Jesus. But that's exactly what Christian Zionists are supporting when they support this, because ultimately the goal is to gain possession of all of the land according to the biblical parameters, which is much larger than the current borders of the state of Israel. That's going to cause a lot of problems, right? But also to reestablish the temple system, which goes completely against Christianity. So it's, again, another one of those self-defeating, self-undermining things. And so take a look at this. You can see they're praying here on the Temple Mount, and they certainly want to have the reestablishment of the temple. And this is, again, breaking the agreement that the state of Israel actually has, where they're not supposed to be doing this. And so it's pushing the envelope further and further to help inch closer towards the reestablishment of the temple. I also wonder if Christian Zionists are aware of this. We've seen the videos circulate pretty frequently on Twitter. I'm not going to show the video since it is graphic, but here's a story about a Palestinian woman who's in the hospital after being clubbed by a masked Israeli settler. We see a lot of violence from some of the settlers in the West Bank. And again, to promote Zionism, one is also going to be promoting, whether you like it or not, this kind of aggression from Israeli settlers in the West Bank. Why? Because from the Zionist perspective, the people of Israel are entitled to all of the land according to the biblical borders, which includes the West Bank and Gaza. So to support Christian Zionism, or support Zionism at all, is to support the idea that the state of Israel is entitled to all that land. Now, in the Old Testament, how did the people gain possession of the land? By driving out the inhabitants. It's very clear in the Old Testament. So on biblical grounds, one would simply argue, well, that's what you have to do today. You got to drive them out of the land. This is what people are supporting, and they need to realize that. This horrified me. We saw Trump just recently at the Knesset bragging about the kind of destructive weapons he has given to Israel to brutally massacre numerous people there. And he's bragging about this shamelessly, indicting himself, sadly, in the participation of a genocide. With those of us who live in the United States, with our tax dollars, bragging about it, shoving it in our face, mocking us with this. I think that Christian Zionists need to realize this is what they're supporting. Watch how he just brags about this. How can he do this without the support of Christian Zionism? It's only with the support of Christian Zionism. Without the Christians who support Zionism, Netanyahu would not be able to receive this kind of assistance, and Trump would not be able to boast and brag like he does here. Watch this.
I can tell you we have weapons that nobody's ever dreamt of. I only hope we never have to use them. I rebuilt the military. I was proud to do it, but some of the things I hated to do. I hated certain of the weapons because the level of power is so enormous. It's so dangerous, so bad. But we have to do what we have to do. We make the best weapons in the world, and we've got a lot of them. And we've given a lot to Israel, frankly. And
he just indicted himself in a genocide.
I mean, Bibi would call me so many times, can you get me this weapon, that weapon, that weapon? Some of them I never heard of, Bibi, and I made them.
And look at Netanyahu smiling and laughing here. I honestly think our generation is going to look back on this, and they're going to point to this in the same way that my grandparents' generation showed all sorts of footage of Hitler and the Nuremberg trials and pointed to all of that, and convicted them and spoke, criticized them for their involvement in the Holocaust. You know, in the same way that I think my grandparents saw all of that. I think that my generation and the ones that come after me are going to look at this and interpret all of this in the same way. They're going to see this as a new Holocaust, a new genocide, as the new Nazis. Look at Netanyahu just smiling and laughing about this. This is nothing to laugh about.
This weapon, that weapon, that weapon. Some of them I never heard of, Bibi, and I made them. But we'd get them here, wouldn't we? And they are the best. They are the best. But you used them well. It also takes people that know how to use them. And you obviously used them very well. But so many that Israel became strong and powerful.
No, they didn't. They didn't use them well. They massacred numerous civilians and still are. Innocent people who are not combatants. They did not use them well. What is he talking about? This video was put together of a clip of that speech. I think it says everything about this. Watch this.
I mean, Bibi would call me so many times, can you get me this weapon, that weapon, that weapon? Some of them I never heard of, Bibi, and I made them. But we'd get them here, wouldn't we? And they are the best. They are the best. And But you used them well. It also takes people that know how to use them, and you obviously used them very well. Mr. President, why don't you give him a pardon?
I can't believe Trump said that, and I can't believe that we're supporting this with our tax dollars. And again, mostly because of Christian Zionism. Without Christian Zionism, this wouldn't happen. There wouldn't be enough support for the United States to fund this genocide. Norman Finkelstein is asking some interesting questions here. Take a look at this one.
Hamas has to be dismantled because of what it did on October 7th. Then if you take Operation Cast Lead, Operation Pillar of Defense, Operation Protective Edge, then the Israeli government has to be dismantled 10 times
Yeah, I
over.
follow you, but it's not really an answer to the question.
Oh, it is an answer to the
No,
question.
because-
It's called keeping a single standard.
No, it's
You want to
No,
talk
you
about you want to talk about the 290 Israeli hostages? I say fine, but then let's talk about the 2,300,000 Gazans.
has
Hold everyone to a single standard. Number two,
Should both governments? What do you mean Israeli? What do you mean by
I'm
dismantling the
saying
Israeli government? Election?
if you want to decide that Hamas has to be dismantled because of what it did on October 7th, I say fine. But then the Israeli government has to also be dismantled because for 20 years it's kept the whole population confined in a concentration
I don't
camp
understand.
and periodically
I get you.
and periodically mows
Professor,
the lawn.
okay,
It mows
Professor,
the lawn.
That's an interesting perspective there, and holding the conversation to consistency, right? We're talking about dismantling the current authorities in Gaza. Fair enough. But what about the current authorities in administration in Israel? Shouldn't they also maybe be replaced? Shouldn't a group of a new set of authorities in Israel be put in place? Maybe those who value peace, maybe those who value a two-state solution, maybe those who value, actually respecting international borders. It's an interesting thought. About that point with hostages, I'm going to show you this video.
Israeli military is still holding about 9,000 Palestinians in what it calls security prisoners or detainees. Only about 1,000 of them have actually been convicted of any crime. The vast majority of people being held are being held without trial, either in what's called administrative detention for the West Bank or the unlawful combatants law for folks from Gaza. That means that there's no allegation that they've committed a crime. They're being held on a charge of dangerousness that is backed by secret evidence that neither they nor their lawyers can either see or challenge. It is an arbitrary system in which every day, including yesterday, the Israeli military is rounding up more and more Palestinians in the West from the West Bank now and just refilling those detention and prison cells where people are subject to serious abuse.
Are they prisoners or hostages? It's interesting the way I saw the conversation framed. I saw people say, the Israeli hostages are being released in exchange. Palestinian prisoners are going to be released. That's interesting the way that was framed, right? Hostages versus prisoners. That's interesting. Are they prisoners or hostages? Just asking questions about the way we're framing a lot of the conversation, right? In light of what we just saw here. So anyways, I again wonder, when you see all this stuff, I really wonder the Christian Zionists, if they realize what they're supporting, if they realize how self-defeating and contradictory it is, and also if they realize what they're complicit in. I don't know. I wanted to do this video to maybe start that conversation and bring people's awareness to this and have that conversation. If you think that, supporting Zionism from the Christian perspective is not inherently contradictory or self-defeating, I'd love to hear from you. How do you explain that? And how do you account for what we're seeing here? Or if you do think that it is inherently contradictory, okay. So is this something that we need to speak out more against? And is this stuff that we should really be funding, especially those of us who live here in the United States? I think these are important questions to consider, and I hope I've done that respectfully and also effectively in this video. If you think that I have, please share this with a friend, hit the like button, and also the subscribe button. I'll see you tomorrow. God bless.